Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Mark. So Mark, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan, for having me. So I live in the Toronto area in Canada, in Oakville. My profession, I'm trained as a nephrologist, so I am a physician. I work in Waterloo. I deal with pretty complex patients. And you can see sort of when I get into it, my startup and what I do as my side gig, so-called side gig, I deal with things like kidney transplants, dialysis, very, very sick patients. So that's who I am on my medical front, but I also am the founder and the executive chairman of FirstHX, a med tech AI-based company, and that is sort of the initial. That's me.
Awesome. So yeah, in terms of your startup, right? I mean, it seems to me like it's very much like in line with your career, right? That sort of saw like a need and started this company. So yeah, just tell me more about your story and kind of how you got this idea and how exactly that you best serve your clients today.
Cool. I always like telling the startup story because it's never linear, right? The path you take it's like windy and twisty, and it's never going to go the way you initially plan. When you're younger, you're an idealist. I'm now considered old in this business. I might act young, and my wife and my kids think I act young, but it's interesting. So the concept actually of this started in the mid 90s, believe it or not, in university. And so here I am being thinking I know everything, having the coolest introduction to things like AI and ML. And believe it or not, in the mid 90s, they had that, right? And so serving in university, serving courses in this and thinking about really cool applications that you can apply this new technology to. And this was 1995, 96. Pretty wild, forward thinking. And at that point, I thought about medicine as a career and eventually went into med school. And that is where the concept of FirstHX actually first started. I met my co-founder, Roman Ellenson, who actually still works in the business today with me, which is kind of cool. And we actually had the first version of FirstHX. It was called healthinquiry.com back then. And it was a system that was able to take medical histories from patients. And so the idea is, can we create a digital doctor, to do some of our upfront work before we actually see the doc? And how do you actually improve the process of healthcare? And how do you make things efficient and good for the patient experience, also good for the health systems? And we were in med school thinking about this back then, but you have to have many, many failures before you have a success. So we failed, but we validated the system and the product and the process back then. And it's now 2000, it's 2022, 2001, 2002. We validated it, got a research paper. And what was interesting, what we learned about that is that although the health system needed it and patients needed it, and they were looking for efficiencies in care, we couldn't do anything back then because the system itself couldn't support the advanced technology. You needed iPhones and like Wi-Fi computing, and you needed people to be comfortable with technology in healthcare before you can do anything. And so believe it or not, we never lost the dream, right? We never lost the dream, but we knew that at some point it would work. We had a few other spin-offs of the company, but then 2017 rolled around and it was like, that was it. That was the year where things started to change again, and we resurrected the company. We renamed it FirstHX, rebuilt the system, rebuilt the process, and started to rebuild the team and validation. But what was so cool with it is that all along the way, we were building our practices. He's a physician, I'm a physician. We were building our practices, and we realized the health system is struggling, is suffering, whether in Canada, the US, or across the world. There were many patients, too few physicians, too few nurses, too few ancillary services. We knew we needed to figure out a way to make the process of care efficient, right? And we knew that technology was the only way to do it because the people are getting older. The demography is not going to keep up. So we knew that this was it. This is where we strike, and we did it. So that's sort of the founding story, but the tech is really freaking cool. I'll tell you, I know I talk a lot, but I'll tell you what it is. It's like,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, we basically created a digital twin of physician cognitive knowledge and cognitive reasoning. And so think about what that means, right? It's just imagine like twinning the brain for a physician's experience and tacit knowledge and textbook knowledge and like heuristics and all of those things packaged into a little system that can be like a digital doctor and take medical histories like I would take a medical history, right? That is what we built. And it's taken a long time and a lot of time from specialists to code it. But it really is very hard to do, but it actually works. So that's sort of that was the start, the need, the resurrection. It was pretty wild to see it kind of evolve, but here we are still here today. So, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we were talking earlier, right before the call, and as I mentioned, I'm based here in Austin, and you were talking about how you have, a client or a customer, you could say, in Houston. So I'm curious more about that, right? Because, obviously you're based in Canada. So are most of your customers here in the States? You have customers all around the world. What does that kind of breakdown look like? Because obviously every country is different when it comes to the medical field.
Right. And so we are based in Canada, but our reach is global. We do have installations in the States, in the US market. It is actually our biggest growth market right now. We have across Canada as well. And we also have installations in the Middle East and soon to in the UK. Middle East reach is predominantly in the Gulf region. So things like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They're very into progressiveness in terms of technologies, similar to the US and Canada. So we go where opportunity, where opportunity allows us to go. That is sort of what we've seen. The biggest thing we've noticed from our customers is they need information and data, right? And
Right.
so everyone talks about information, data. Data is the key, but that truly is the key in healthcare. And so if you think about our customers in Houston, they had a very specific use case. They needed information and key information to do clinical trials. And so think about the power of being able to do real-time clinical trial screening as part of the normal process of care of going to see your cardiologist, as an example, and it just screens you automatically for clinical trials. And that is how quick our system works. But when I talk about information and data, the big thing I'm saying is when you look at how information is structured in an EMR, that information is actually is mostly unstructured. So patient level information, like the histories that you give me if you're sick, and that I actually put into the system is usually unstructured data elements. Our goal is to structure it so you can use the information after you get it to advise clinical processes, whether it be for the physicians to advise diagnosis and treatment, for the health system to help with charge capture, for the government to determine how to predict outbreaks because our system has such great data that we can predict when influenza will hit. Or if you're a clinical trials company and a pharma company and you need data to do quick patient recruitment. The power is our system creates very real, truthful data, and it's the power of our technology. So it is actually the source of true data. And so that's kind of what we do. And our customers, again, are all the same. They all need information, and we gather that information efficiently and effectively. And the cost to do it is cheap because it's the patient giving us the data. We don't get the doctors to do it. So there's no hiring of people. Patient has all the data. We
Right.
just contextualize it. So yeah,
But you partner with the hospitals to, okay. And I
you
guess
got it.
like, yeah. And so from that standpoint, right, like in this industry, as you know, being in it yourself, it can be a very long sales cycle. I mean, it's just super complex. So how have you kind of navigated, through that to even, get trial at first and to even get, hospitals to adopt your platform?
I think that is honestly, Dan, that is one of the best questions because you hit the nail on the head. Healthcare is slow, but extremely sticky. And when they see a solution that is one, not a competitive solution to what they have, or two, doesn't create increased work, and three, increases ROI with time. And so those are three key things. And the fourth thing is that it doesn't replace the physician. You get adoption. And so when we present our solutions and say, here's what we do, it's going to cost you no effort and no personnel time. We integrate in everything, just about every EMR. We can stand you up really quickly. Here's your return on investment, and here are the numbers. And we'll show you the investment within 6 months. You'll see the return. When we do that, they let us in. It's a really remarkable thing because they haven't seen a system like ours before. We really don't. We always talk about competition. There might be people sort of in our space of data gathering, but we're not really just data gathering, right? We're data production and organization, but we're specifically gathering data at the patient level, and it is specifically documenting the interaction between the physician and patient before you see the physician at that time. So we don't compete with scribes. In fact, we're actually scribes, we're partnered with scribe companies because they update our information. So we help AI companies. We're kind of like the source data to train the LLMs.
Right.
So you can see we're not an AI competitor, right?
Right.
Although we use AI suite of features, at
Right.
the core of it, we create the source data that LLMs use. We create the source data that EMRs use to help with billing and charge capture. We don't, so that's why they let us in. It's remarkable to see it. They don't see us as a competitor. So they're like, yeah, of course. But we're not running into people like us because it's really, really hard to create what we've created because it takes a ton of physician time to create the history, that organic question and answer type system and mix that with technology. You need hundreds of thousands of hours of physician time, and forms just don't cut it, right? Forms don't think, chatbots don't have the correct source data, and so we're like a dynamic question and answer thinking machine that can change on the fly depending on where you are in the world. So our system taking histories in Dubai is different than the system that we have in Texas because
Right.
the patients are different. So we
Exactly.
can code things and change things in real time in different places because patients are different. That's what makes us unique. And we're very clinician heavy, but also tech heavy. We're both, right?
That's awesome. And so I guess on that note, right, because obviously, you've been doing this for some time and, now we're in 2025 and in Q1. So we still have a good amount of time left to go here in this year. So in terms of your goals and objectives, like what are some of your biggest goals for the rest of this year?
Yeah, very good question again. I want to say where we're at and then what our go forward looks like. We always talk
Sure.
about forward looking statements, right? And projections. So believe it or not, we're only about 6 months into sales.
Okay.
That's it. And why I'm saying that is our generation 2 product, which was the scalable product that we can do real-time updates and update the clinical aspects plus updates, in real time. That only came to light in the last 6 months, even though, and of course, we engaged hospitals and hospital systems prior to that to set them up for it because of the long sales cycle. But it took us 6 or 7 years just to kind of get the privacy, the security, the integrations, all the validation studies, all that stuff took time before we went live. You have to do the pre-work so that you're ironclad. And so 6 months and so forth, we are now at 2.2 million patients served. So that is really fast, right? And I think we're now in the 4,000 patients a day use all over
Wow.
the world on multiple platforms, whether it be virtual care, in-person care, and we even have now pharma and pharma trials. So we've got like multiple verticals all scaling at once. And so our go forward is we think we're going to be easily doubling or tripling the number of patients this year. So we think we're going to be at 6 million plus patients served this year, and probably more than that, as we have very large institutional contracts that are coming online to do very significant clinical trials, for example, but also large health systems that are going to start to use us and utilize. So the growth this year we think will triple. And that is a massive metric. That's our North Star. Can we triple our growth? And then can we go exponential next year is the answer. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping we triple it and we get to 6 million patients plus. I
That's
think we can do
awesome.
it because of the number of contracts we're signing. It really is, and we know we're doing something right because we keep hiring people
That's good.
to help us scale, right?
That's awesome. No, that's super exciting and a really good goal. So I guess on that note, right, if you could go back in time to before you started your entrepreneurship journey, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
The one piece of advice is I would have prepped myself for the number of people that I would meet that would say, you're not doing the right thing or you're going to fail. And no, right? No, we're not going to invest. You are going to fail. You don't know what you're doing. It's remarkable how many people you run into who block progress. But the key point there is if you know, because we're in the business, I treat patients, I know what they need. I know what the health system needs, right? I'm not someone outside trying to build something for the inside. I am in the inside, right? So I know what they need. And if you just stick with your conviction and say, I know what I'm doing is right. I'm going to hear a lot of people that say no. Let them say no and then prove them wrong. Just persevere. And so that's the main thing, is just accept that you're going to meet a lot of people that are negative, but surround yourself with people that are positive and that lift your spirits. And you're going to have ups and down days. It's a wild roller coaster. You will not succeed the first time. You're going to fail many times, and you're going to feel like you're going to come on the verge of bankruptcy many times, right? Where you feel alone and you feel like no one understands. But people in the startup business have all been here, right? They've all been in the startup business, understand what failure looks like. But so that's what I would say to people, and say to my old self, is accept that it's going to be a rocky journey and that people are going to obstruct you. But if you believe what you're doing, keep doing it. And one thing I can know about me is I never start something that I don't finish. And that's one character I've noticed for just about everything I do. And you could see that. I started this when? Like in the mid 90s. Like, believe it or not, I saw Nirvana in the early 90s before, of course. So that's how old I am, right? That's how long I've been doing this. And I'm still doing it because I feel it's the right thing and it's actually working, which is kind of cool, right? So I validated the thesis from the mid 90s that yes, you can. It might take long, but you stick with what you started, right? I teach my kids that too. You start, you're gonna have negative people, but stick with what you started, get it and see it through if you feel that this is right, right?
That's awesome. That's really good advice, Mark. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you personally or to find your business, do you mind sharing, I guess, whether it's like your social media, your website,
Absolutely.
but just for people to get in touch?
Absolutely. So the best place for website is www.firsthx.com, FIRSTHX.com. But please email me. I email everyone back, like all the time. I don't care how many hundreds of emails or how busy I am or where I am in the world. I call them back and I email them back. So it's mark.benaroia at firsthx.com. So mark.benaroia at firsthx.com. And I'm happy to speak to anyone, budding entrepreneurs, salespeople, even VCs who want to throw some money. Sure, I might consider it. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thanks so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dan.